Hi, and thanks for joining us for another Q&A Friday, a regular series where we chat about issues facing manufacturing companies in the new world of Industry 4.0. I'm Jessica Vodden, a team member here at Mountain Point, and I'm joined by Storey Parker, a digital project manager, and Andrew Reiser, our co-founder and president. Hey guys.
Hey Jessica, good morning.
Hey Jess.
So we're really happy to have Storey chatting with us today because she's an absolute expert project manager and can offer a lot of insight into how to manage major organizational initiatives such as a digital transformation effort. And let me just note, for those of you who are listening, if you didn't listen to last week's episode with one of our other project managers, Beth, you might want to check that out because I think our conversation today will really build on those concepts and some of the talk that we started last week. And we're just going to dig a little bit deeper with Storey. So Storey, welcome.
Happy to be here.
So last week we talked about a basic framework for managing a digital transformation project and kind of set the baseline for expectations. You know, this is not just a quick implementation. Typically, if you're really undertaking a full digital transformation effort, you're really undertaking some pretty massive cultural change within your company. There are a lot of different approaches to undertaking these types of efforts, right? So Storey, can you give me an overview of some of the standard frameworks for managing these types of initiatives and this sort of change?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I appreciate that project manager accolade. I've been managing Salesforce implementations for a long time and I'm happy to share my experiences with you. So back to your question, the projects that we come across typically are managed using three types of methodologies. We see a waterfall methodology, we see Agile, and then something that we call an Agile hybrid type methodology.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, if I'm new to this, what do those mean? What's waterfall versus Agile? And then I'm assuming the hybrid is something in between.
Yeah, so when determining the best methodology to apply to an implementation, it's really a team effort. And, we work us as a partner with our customer. And based on our years of experience, we know the look of certain types of projects, what type of methodology will be the best fit. So the waterfall approach, it's more of a traditional approach to managing projects. It's where I personally have the most experience. It's a traditional SDLC with a focus on understanding the requirements and really documenting them up front. And it's the place where you have to complete each phase before going on to the next. And if you revert back to a previous phase, it most likely causes some impact to timeline and budget. But projects that fit well here, they have a requirement that requirements be fully fleshed out in the beginning and well documented and signed off on. It sometimes is due to heavy compliance requirements. They have heavy documentation requirements. So the next type of methodology that we use to manage projects is the Agile approach. It's an iterative project approach that focuses on the delivery of production-ready functional components at the end of each iteration or sprint. And in some cases, the clients that we have a requirement to see value quickly. And they can't wait for a heavy documentation front end like the waterfall approach. In some cases, we recommend the Agile approach, but most importantly, for that to work, the client needs to fully understand what Agile methodology is and be willing to be highly involved in the project. Some clients we work with are very familiar with Agile, and they're used to running their internal projects using this type of methodology. So in that case, Agile would be just a natural fit for them, and ultimately, which we're striving for, a successful implementation.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, I get the concept of waterfall, which if I'm understanding you correctly, it's, maybe you have some constraints up front that you need to really sit down and kind of nail down what the entire project might look like from start to finish and kind of focus on that. Whereas Agile is a little bit more chipping away at that problem piece by piece, if I'm understanding correctly. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
So one of the things that I've noticed is that sometimes clients prefer the Agile approach just because sometimes they actually don't quite know how to tackle the entire problem, right? So it's also sort of a learning experience. That being said, there's also this need at times to make certain that they're achieving certain outcomes. So tell me a little bit about what the hybrid approach is like, and does that sort of satisfy both sides of that coin?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're consultants and we need to be flexible and really have good conversations with our customers up front in the sales process and understand where they are in their maturity as an organization and be flexible. And really, we see a push in the ecosystem and the types of projects that we are faced with more towards this agile approach. They need more of the best practices, help. They benefit from seeing a prototype first, or a first draft, if you will, something that they can see and touch in a way and use and provide feedback to. They're not fully wanting or really able to commit to Agile. Again, it's having the communication up front and understanding what the client's abilities are and how we can help them have a successful implementation.
Yeah. So I think my takeaway from this is we know the best practices in terms of project management, managing change and managing implementation, but we're going to do what works for you, because like not every company is the same, right? So it's not a one size fits all sort of scenario. One thing I kind of like to talk about and kind of shift gears toward is this concept of configuration control, which is kind of a techie term, I think, for really making sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of what's been done to the system. Because if we're working with a large organization, there could be multiple environments, there could be multiple stages, there could be certain things put in place by one team that have to stand, and then another team can come in and introduce a conflict. So how do you manage all of those moving parts? What does that look like from your process as the project manager? And what are some best practices that our clients should consider whenever they're taking on a project like this?
It's really a great question. We could probably dedicate an entire segment to kind of where change control fits into the larger change management process. But
so Storey, we often see, especially with our larger projects, that there's not only the internal Mountain Point team and you as a project manager, but oftentimes you're wearing the project manager hat on behalf of the customer as well. And they've got their own internal team and resources and stakeholders. And so when you're balancing the business, IT, executive leadership, and everybody that kind of has a role and responsibility into this large project, oftentimes having this structure in place is what keeps sanity in these projects. So maybe you can explain kind of your experience and dealing with multiple stakeholders and dealing with multiple environments and kind of keeping control in a project.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. We see a lot of customers that we work with and projects that we're a part of that they have the internal resources to take on parts of the project. So we're not only just having to focus on managing our own team internally, but really having to come up with a process that we can both manage our internal resources as well as have a clear communication path with the resources we're using with the customer. And I go back to having a clear understanding in the beginning of the project of how we're going to manage the tools that we're going to use, the channels we're going to use to communicate, the types of documentation, the cadence of meetings, having that full expectation of communication up front. Again, tying back in that agile hybrid type approach, we can have that agile type approach to a project, but having that clear definition of the change management plan and communication plan up front is important, especially when we're dealing with, multiple environments, multiple sandboxes, multiple people developing, but we have the skill set here, the project management skills to help manage all those moving parts.
Yeah, so I think a reoccurring theme that we continue to hear, especially from our project managers like Storey, is communication and expectation management is a big piece of it. And so having those strong communication skills to not only share the best practices, but to keep everybody in alignment so that we're all after the same objectives and vision and can execute it. Because otherwise, as you can imagine, things can quickly spin out of control from a scope and schedule and budget standpoint. So it's great to hear that expectation management is always a part of it, and it starts right at the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, a recurring theme of a lot of these conversations is just setting clear expectations. And again, communicating is crucial. Over communicating really is key as we try to manage a lot of these projects. Well, guys, I won't take up too much of your time today, so we'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks again for chatting with me and for sharing some of your insight. For those of you listening, if you have a question you'd like us to answer or a topic that you want us to tackle, you can hit us up on our social media channels. You can email us, call us. We'd love your feedback. We'd love your advice. Guys, thanks again and happy Friday.
Thanks, Jess. Happy Friday.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Storey.